Well, it's 7 o'clock, so we will start tonight's meeting. And good evening, counselors, staff, presenters, the press, and online viewers. We begin tonight's meeting with the acknowledgement that the land on which we are gathered is in the traditional territories of the Anishinaabeg, specifically Mississauga. We would also like to acknowledge the North Channel Métis Council. We say miigwech to thank Indigenous people for taking care of this land from time immemorial. We are called to treat this secret land, its plants, animals, stories, and its peoples with honor and respect. Prior to beginning this evening's agenda, I would ask that each counselor who is present via video conferencing to answer the roll call when I call your name. Deputy Mayor Paula Summers.
Present.
Councillor Betty Ann Dunbar.
Present.
Councillor Jim Dunbar.
Present.
Councillor Stephen Wells.
Present.
Councillor Jennifer Posterero.
Present.
And Councillor H.P. Roy sends his regrets. Well, Council would like to extend a huge thank you to the organizers of this year's Community Days event. This includes Timber Village Museum and all the volunteers who made the annual Teddy Bear Picnic a success. All the organizers of the Blind River Demolition Derby that saw record crowds in attendance. We would also like to acknowledge Summer Jameson and the Blind River Skating Club for organizing the Community Days Parade, with special thanks to Anne and Don Ross for judging the bicycles. And thank you to all the vendors who set up their booths on Woodward Avenue for a day of incredible deals. Last but not least, to Marcel Jacques and his band for a fun night at the Legion. Community Days is made possible thanks to our volunteers. And we would also like to thank Public Works for their support in bringing all the events to fruition. And park staff, thank you so much for doing all the great work on the grounds as well. Tomorrow night will be this term of council's last information night. Over the past 4 years, we have covered topics such as North Shore Power Group, Chemical, the town's finances, department overviews, the service delivery review, the asset management plan, the strategic plan. We had the Blind River and District Chamber of Commerce, the community improvement plan, highlights of the town's improvements, our concerns and complaints procedures under a new software package, MPAC, and so much more. And tomorrow night's information session will continue to show the transparency of your local government. The Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing will be there, our Deputy Town Clerk, the CEO of the Blind River Public Library, and the Blind River Rotary will be providing updates via Zoom. This is an opportunity to share the highlights of what's transpiring in our community. And please go to the town website for the Zoom link. Also, a reminder that the call for candidates for our municipal election is underway, and we look forward to having a healthy list of candidates by the end of the nominating period. And that's coming up shortly. It is August the 19th at 2 p.m. And if you are considering running for town council, please go to the town website and follow the steps to register. Last, but certainly not least, we continue to pray for everyone in Ukraine and hope that our war will end soon. Now, without further ado, turning to tonight's agenda, I have a motion from Councillor Wells, seconded by Councillor Posterero. Be it resolved that council approve the agenda and the closed meeting agenda as presented. All in favor with this motion? And that is carried. Thank you. And are there any declarations of pecuniary interest or conflict of interest? Seeing none, we can move on to the adoption of the previous minutes from the previous meeting. Motion moved by Councillor Jim Dunbar, seconded by Councillor Betty Ann Dunbar. Be it resolved that council adopt the minutes of the regular council meeting of June 20th, 2022, and the meeting minutes of the public meeting of council held June 20th, 2022, as presented. All in favor with this motion? And that is carried. Thank you. And is there any business which council wishes to discuss as a result of the meeting minutes? Seeing none, we can move on to our public presentation. And Tiffany Shishetto is no stranger to our council. And Tiffany, the floor is yours to give us the financial statements. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, everyone. So I'm just going to quickly share my screen so that we can all see the same information. And please let me know before I start. Everybody can see it okay?
Just perfect. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay, so we're here going through the 2021 financial statements for the year, and a few exciting items that I'd like to bring to everyone's attention as we go through the statements. I think if you've looked through the package, you'll see it was a great year and some good developments on some other fronts that positively impacted the town's financial statements. So let's take a peek. So first of all, we have the independent auditors report as usual. So that everybody remembers, these financial statements, all we're going through in the presentation is just an excerpt of the draft statements. So if you'd like to follow along in the other draft version that I believe was in your council package, please feel free to do so. So the key paragraph, as always, is right here, that my cursor is going around, which is the opinion paragraph, which does state that these financial statements are prepared in accordance with the public sector accounting standards, which includes all of the presentation, recognition, and disclosure requirements. So it's a clean opinion. There weren't any changes in the auditing standards in the current year, so just a few little things to note. So an unqualified or clean opinion that we would be proposing to issue. And of course, if council approves the statements today, this will just say July 11th in the final statements that we're going to be providing. Materiality, as usual, is always calculated based on a percentage of your operating expenses, given that that would be mainly what your residents would be interested in, who would be the users of your statements. Of course, the statements are draft until approval by council today. That is important because if events or circumstances happen up until today's date, while the statements are for the December year end, they would have to be reflected in the note disclosure for any significant events occurring subsequent to year end. You will see that we do have some subsequent events included in the statements in the current year, and I'll get to that when we get to that point. Of course, a statement of management responsibility is typical in the public sector world. Any municipal set of financial statements, you will see this, which does indicate that the statements are prepared using a robust system of internal controls that management is responsible for ensuring is there on an ongoing basis throughout the year. So similar to prior years, no change here, given that the operations have remained pretty consistent on a year-over-year basis, focusing in on those very typical areas: revenue, accounts receivable, deferred revenue, operating expenses and accounts payable, payroll, and then your capital transactions. That covers off the majority. Of course, given that there is the long-term debt, we do also focus on that and get confirmations from third parties. We do some control testing, but primarily focus our audit on a substantive basis in the current year. All right, so getting to the numbers. So a few things just to point out right off the bat. I think a very positive movement here. You can see your net financial debt had a pretty significant improvement in the current year of $3.5 million. We'll get to why that was in just a second, but I did want to highlight that because that's great news. Also, very large increase in the accumulated surplus. You'll see why that is, but it's driven by the current year surplus and the impairment reversal of a portion of the advances due from the related party, which would be the North Shore Power Group. So let's go over the items. What changed? So cash is down. Actually, it's up a little bit. Apologies for that. So you can see in the cash flow statement, there was positive cash flow from operating activities that allowed for of about 2.2 million, which allowed for the purchase of capital items as well as the repayment of debt. So really, pretty flat on a year-over-year basis because of those operating dollars. Taxes receivable, sorry, I do apologize. That should be saying the taxes receivable did increase slightly. You'll see that change on the next page there. And now just looking at the collectability of those balances. Receivables are up, and that's just as a result of some grants that were outstanding as of the end of the year. Nothing to be concerned with, of course. What we look at for receivables, we say, okay, are they from individuals or organizations that are going to be repaying those amounts? When they're coming from government sources, of course, we're not as concerned with collectability of those balances. So there were some federal grants for the FedNor Marina funding, as well as some increased provincial grants. So some amounts from NOHFC and some ICIP COVID-related funding. Of course, also a bit of an increase in HST receivable in the year as well. So those are collectible government receivables, so no concerns from that perspective. You can see the advances to related parties. So that balance is up. And no, it's not because you went and you provided additional funds to North Shore Power Group. It's up because there was a partial reversal of the impairment that would have been recorded, I believe, back in 2016 or so. So at that point in time, the one receivable that was the balloon payment receivable that was to be received as, back in, or I guess in 2036. That amount was fully written off at that point in time because it wasn't determined at that point in time that the amount would be collected. Of course, the council is aware that subsequent to year end, there was a large payment made from NSPG against that balloon receivable in the amount of $4 million, which was subsequently transferred over to CMHC for the long-term debt. So as a result, of course, because we see that cash flow coming in, does give us very good indication that that amount is in fact collectible. So as a result, that's why you would have seen the adjustment for that related receivable that we got to record. Of course, when the cash flow would have come in 2022, you're then going to see the corresponding reversal or downwards of that advances. So you increase it to say, oh yes, we know we're going to get that cash flow. In January of 2022, when the cash came in, the balance would have been reduced by that cash payment that would have been made. So looking here at what's happening from a taxes receivable, I do want to give some kudos to your team for sure. You can see that the taxes receivable as a percentage of your levy is trending downwards. So now at 12.7% of your total tax levy. So of course, the lower the receivable balance, the more collectible those balances are. You can see also what I always think is encouraging, when you have these prior year taxes receivable, the older they get, the more difficult they are to collect. So continuing to have those balances trending downwards is always very good to see. Usually you all will ask me, well, what percentages do you see around the north? All the way up to around 25% of taxes receivable, and all the way down to about 7 or 8%. So very large range, but you would definitely be on the lower end of the range compared to your peers in the north. Now switching over to the financial liabilities, you can see that your accounts payable and accrued liabilities are up to 1.7 million as of the end of the year. So whenever there's a lot of or a significant amount of capital work outstanding at the end of the year, it's just the timing of the payments. Vendor payments are up, holdbacks are up for those amounts, and that's just what we were seeing at the end of the year, driving up that balance. Deferred revenue, you can see here, deferred revenue is up to 1.6 million at the end of the year. That's just as a result of some unused funding in the year. So your OCIF funding and your federal gas tax dollars are all eligible to be carried over to the subsequent year to use on eligible projects. So they weren't spent at the end of the year, so they're sitting in deferred revenue to be used in the coming year, of course. Your long-term debt. So no new long-term debt has been taken on in the current year. The balance is trending downwards because it relates to the principal repayments. Now, there were some activities that did occur with CMHC in 2022, given that the payment, the balloon payment of $4 million was transferred over to CMHC. So as a result of that, that does meet the definition of a debt forgiveness. I do have some information on that on the last slide that you're going to see. Because that did occur in the 2022 year end, you're going to see those payments being recorded, and any, we'll call it, resulting benefit that CMHC would have provided to you as a result of making that balloon payment early would be reflected in the 2022 financial statements. So the good news is you haven't seen all of the impact of that good cash flow that's starting to find its way into the town as a result of those that debt arrangement. Capital assets are down, and that's because the capital spending of $2.7 million was just a bit lower than your annual depreciation of $3.2 million. So depreciation draws down the asset value, so you can see a change of about $500,000. So looking at what you spent, there was a lot spent in the year. So just wanted to give a bit of a summary of what the capital spending was on in the current year. As we're seeing throughout the north, a lot of road work that is really driving the investment in capital in the year. Some vehicle purchases, the marina work. I tried to note when there was some specific funding attached to some of these capital purchases, because there was some funding from the Jays Care project as well as NOHFC that was facilitating the town's ability to invest in some of these capital items. So that's a bit of a summary of what we were seeing in the year. Not really too much else to note there. So this is where you do see the main change in the current year and where you see the impact of the reversal of the impairment. So before we get to that, we'll just talk about what happened from your regular ongoing operating activities. So number one, you can see your provincial grants. Provincial grants are down to $2.8 million at the end of 2021. You heard me say just a few slides ago, your unused OSIF funding was up. So as a result, your used OSIF funding was down, which is why you see the decrease in your provincial grants in the current year. So about 928,000 of provincial grants under the OSIF stream last year, 41,000 in the current year. So that's what's driving it down. You will also remember there was a lot of Safe Restart dollars that the province was providing for COVID-related relief. That was in the prior year, so that would have caused an increase in the provincial grants in the prior year. Federal grants are up because there was some increased usage of the federal gas tax dollars in the current year on some particular projects as well. There was a significant amount of federal ICIP funding that was received to facilitate your capital projects that were going on in the year. Taxation revenue is up, and this is just as a result of an increase in the tax rates noted in the current year. Your user charges have increased, and that's mainly as a result of your land sales that have occurred in the 2021 year end. So about almost 320,000 in land sales noted, and some additional capital donations as well noted in the current in 2021. So how was that spent? Looking at your total expenses, I think we would all expect seeing an increase in your revenues. You're going to see an increase in your operating expenses. So the expenses were up in the current year by about 570,000. So a few things to note. So number one, your general government expenses Back in the prior year, there was a mandate or requirement to include all of your COVID-related expenses in general government. Of course, that there were more expenses in 2020 than there were in 2021. So that's one reason for the decrease. As well, there was some additional asset management planning expenses noted in the prior year that were more of a one-time in nature and didn't repeat into 2021. Protection to persons and property, so not really too much to note there, not a significant change in the year. Transportation services, though, was up to 3.3 million in 2021. And that's just as a result of, you saw a few slides back, some capital road work being done. What goes hand in hand with the capital road work is some operating road work as well. So additional road material, contractor costs, so things that don't quite meet the definition of a capital asset because it's ongoing repairs and maintenance. You'll see those expenses recorded in the transportation services expense line. Your environmental services. Same reason that you're seeing transportation services up for material costs and maintenance and those kind of things. Same reason you're seeing environmental services down. So decreased material costs in the current year. There were significantly higher material and hydro costs noted in the 2020 fiscal year. Recreation and culture, again, if we think back to 2020, we probably don't want to, but that was when we were in the thick of COVID. A lot of things were closed, not operating as they would in a normal basis. Golf course definitely was open, you know, for not the full year, not the full season. And the golf course really does, you know, provide a benefit in terms of additional revenues for the town. But there's also a corresponding increase in the expenses as well. And then planning and development is up, and there were just some additional consulting costs in 2021. And then, as I mentioned, protection to persons and health, social, and family services are pretty consistent on a year-over-year basis. So you do see the impairment reversal here. If you just give me 1 second, we can talk about that at the end, because I just have some additional explanatory information about why we did what we did in that area. Oops, sorry about that, everyone. So this just also gives you a bit of a reflection of what did you actually spend the funds on? It's interesting to say, well, it was general government or environmental services or protection, but this breaks it down a little bit more and says, okay, was it on wages? Was it on contracted services? What did you spend it on? And so just a few things to note. So number one, your wages and benefits. So the green line is the current year. Wages and benefits have been trending downwards, but your contracted services, so those are up. So remember I had mentioned, you know, the road work, things like that you're doing. Those are the things that are going to increase, say, some of your contracted services and some of your, you know, materials and things like that are being used. You can see this is steadily increasing, your amortization, and this is because the town has been continually investing in the capital assets associated with the town over the last number of years. And this is what you always want to see, because you want your amortization to be very reflective of your current year additions. The two should be mirroring each other to show that the town is investing in the capital that's needed for infrastructure for the town. So of course, we've been seeing an investment in capital over the last number of years. So going to be seeing this trending upwards for sure. So everybody's $1 million question. So we have the $4.4 million surplus, but how much is that for the town to keep on an ongoing basis? And I'm pretty happy to say that a good majority of it actually is now sitting in your general surplus. And we'll see that in just a second in your surplus note. So remember, in any given year where you're investing a lot in capital, there are going to be a lot of capital grants that you're going to be receiving from both the province as well as the federal government. So that's why in this slide, we do reconcile out anything relating to capital, because that sits in a bucket and you have to remember, once we've spent it on capital, unless the town is in the in the business of selling an arena or something like that, you're not getting any benefit when you've sold those assets. So you've invested for the purposes of the residents and the town, so you're not going to touch that. We then go and we say, okay, what did you transfer to reserves? What did council say? We're going to park there and we're going to have it for future needs of the town. And you were able to transfer over 880,000 to reserves to be used for future purposes. After considering all of the capital transactions and your transfers to reserves, 3.968 million was able to be kept in your general reserve. Now, if we step back for a second and think about it, you had a $4 million impairment reversal, 3.968 million is sitting in your general surplus. That tells me pretty break even in the year after you've considered your transfers over to your reserves. So if we can just look at that for a second, it's just on this one here. I think this is a great news story. Can see your general fund deficit down to 10.8 million as of the end of 2021. And you can see your reserves set aside by council are up to just over 6.6 million at the end of the year. Continued, as I mentioned, to invest in your capital. However, your amortization was slightly higher than your additions in the year. And that's why you're seeing that balance just slightly down in the current year. But all very positive looking at these numbers. So in terms of our audit, and of course, I can go back to any points that council would like me to go over again. But in terms of our audit, we are complete pending the approval by council of the statements. We will just wait for Sue to send along the, actually, I shouldn't even say that. She sent it this morning, my apologies. So we have that now, so we're good to issue and final as needed. All of the audit adjustments we worked through with Sue, and they've been reflected in these financial statements. And there are no control deficiencies that we need to bring to council's attention. As I mentioned, I did just have one quick thing that I wanted to note on the amendment to the CMHC loan. And did want to highlight that we do have a subsequent event note in the statements, and I'll highlight to you where that is. So the payment of $4 million was made to CMHC in January of 2022. So we did include note disclosure because that is a material transaction that occurred subsequent to year end that we did believe was important to be reflected in the statements. So you have to remember that with a loan receivable, when there's a restructuring, it's effectively a settlement of the old agreement that was in place. And then we need to look at what the new agreement is going to be reflecting. So in 2022, when the payment was actually made to CMHC, at that point in time, we would then be looking at, okay, well, what is that debt value now worth? And is there any corresponding further adjustment that needs to be reflected as part of the advances that are owing from related parties? So to be continued, and we'll work through that analysis in the coming year. But I did just want to really quickly highlight one thing. Apologies for spinning this fast. You can see here, subsequent events, note 23. That's where we do speak in the draft financial statement notes to the payment made to CMHC subsequent to year end. So that was a lot of talking about a lot of numbers. So if it's all right, I'll stop sharing my screen so I can see everyone, and of course answer any questions that you might have.
Great presentation, Tiffany. And council, it's your turn to ask questions. Do you have any questions of Tiffany on this financial review? Tiffany, you did such a great job that council has no questions for you. I would like to thank you and KPMG for doing such a great job. And I'd like to also extend great thank you to Sue Dent for keeping us in the know, in the position of where we should be, and also our administration for spending wisely. So thanks to everyone for this. And here's to 2021. It was a good year. We just have to forget about the COVID thing.
Definitely.
Yeah, thanks, Tiffany. Much appreciated.
Thank you,
And
everyone.
I do have a motion before you leave. I have a motion that moved by Deputy Mayor Summers, seconded by Councillor Betty Ann Dunbar. Be it resolved that council accept the 2021 financial statements as presented by KPMG. Discussions? Seeing none, all in favor of this motion? And that is carried. Thanks, everyone, and thank you again, Tiffany. Have a great evening. Oh, okay, and on to introduction and consideration of administrative reports. 9.1, the administration has provided council with an ongoing projects update. This is an ongoing discussion for council. Are there any questions on the updates as provided by administration? And I'm not seeing any hands going up, so we are marching right along with that one too. From our CAO clerk, the backhoe tender results were in, and we have a report to that effect. I have a motion on the floor, moved by Deputy Mayor Summers, seconded by Councillor Betty Ann Dunbar. Be it resolved that council approve the purchase of a John Deere backhoe in the amount of $152,437, including HST. And that the additional funds be taken from the equipment reserve in 2022, and that the 2023 budget include a transfer to the equipment reserve in the amount of $76,795.52. Discussion, questions? Seeing no hands going up, all in favor with this motion? And that's carried. Thank you. And from our treasurer, the final 2021 reserve transfers. I have a motion on the table moved by Councillor Posterero, seconded by Councillor Jim Dunbar. Be it resolved that council approve the transfers to the reserve as presented. Are there any questions on this motion? And seeing none, all in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Item number 10, the service delivery review status. July 2022, we have a service delivery review update. Does council have any questions as it relates to the service delivery review? Councillor Posterero.
I just wanted to make a quick comment because I know that a lot of hard work goes into this and sometimes it's hefty reading. But I just wanted to, as we could see in the KPMG presentation tonight, some of the notes, although they may seem disparaging when you're reading it about asset management plan, we're definitely moving in the right direction. So I just want to thank administration for continually putting in the hard work. And we do read them. They're just so comprehensive. We don't usually talk about it. But just hopefully those notes will be more positive in the future now that we're moving in a more progressive direction of taking care of our assets. So thanks.
Thank you. And I'm sure that it's echoed by the rest of council. 11.1 corporate services meeting from June 27th, 2022. We have a motion that is moved from Councillor Wells, seconded by Deputy Mayor Summers. Be it resolved that council authorize the clear risk and claim system be forwarded to the budget committee for the 2023 budget deliberations as recommended by the Corporate Services Committee. Are there any questions on this? Councillor Jim Dunbar.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just like to maybe have some a little more information on the benefit of maybe looking at going forward with this. If maybe someone from probably administration might be able to enlighten us.
And Ms. Dent is ready to answer your question.
Thank you.
Thank you, through you, Madam Mayor. I would just say we could definitely put something on the budget committee meeting that is scheduled for August that would give you some more information on this program.
Thank you. Any other questions? Moving forward on this motion, all in favor with this motion? And that's carried. Thank you. And our CAO clerk has given us an update on the Palace Theater, and we've seen the requests in our weekly news releases. Does council have any questions on the status of the Palace Theater? Maybe Deputy Mayor Summers.
I think I just wanted to know if anything new was going on or if we heard any more since that meeting.
Through you, Madam Mayor, we have had no inquiries with regard to this proposal that is out in the public at this time.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Pastorero.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I know I've definitely shared that request for new people to jump on that because I know the community really loves that. I'm just wondering if with that call for a new operator, does it discuss like the scope and parameters of operating it? Maybe someone thinks that it's too onerous of a job, and maybe if we had the scope of running the theater, if that was attached, maybe more people would hopefully step forward.
Through you, Madam Mayor, we can look into that. To be honest with council, though, administration was not involved in the running of the equipment, and anybody who was interested would have to go through the training from the company that we did purchase it from. But we can certainly look and see if there's any Coles notes, if you will, on the operation of that system. I do know that when we did upgrade it a few years ago, it was upgraded to a much simpler system to use rather than, it's not the big reels anymore. It's just a disc type thing. So I can certainly get some Coles notes on that and include that in the process.
Thank you. And from Community Services, we have a wedding fee consideration. This motion is moved by Councillor Jim Dunbar, seconded by Councillor Pastorero. Whereas council recognizes an additional revenue source that supports Blind River's service delivery review, as well as encourages a large number of users to directly benefit from Blind River's goods and services. Therefore, be it resolved that council authorize bylaw 22-14 2022 municipal user fees being updated to include a 90-minute $35 plus HST wedding fee at both Sellers Beach and the Marine Park as recommended by the Community Services Committee. Questions, comments? Councillor Jim Dunbar, followed by Councillor Pastorero.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As we went over this here recommendation here to council, I think maybe I might ask Ms. Bittner just to elaborate that the people here maybe in town who might see this, this would not stop someone from using it personally, as long as they understand that there may be someone with an actual permit to be there. But I think maybe just a little explanation from Ms. Bittner might help people to understand this.
And I see Ms. Bittner's video is on, so the floor is yours.
Absolutely. I will pre-frame by we have some little fox babies running around the subdivision and my dogs are quite vocal, so I'll apologize if barking comes through my my mic. So thanks, Councillor Dunbar. Essentially what this is, council, is another opportunity if there's a smaller group or perhaps a couple that would like a very intimate ceremony and they don't require setup or chairs. They simply want to have a special day together and be united and then have a permit so they could have 90 minutes of solitude in either one of the pavilion or the new B. Jensen gazebo. And then what would happen is when they get their marriage license from the clerk's department, they would be given a note from the clerk's department that would support that. So when they do show up to get ready, if someone's down there reading a book or perhaps a family's on the beach swimming, they could show that and say, we actually have the pavilion from 1 o'clock until 1:30 today, gives that family some time to move and also help them support that claim. But no, Councillor Dunbar, the other comment you made at the beginning is this does not prevent somebody from going to use the gazebo. For instance, if you wanted to go and have a coffee with your children in there, you don't have to pay a fee to go and use it for 90 minutes. This is just for somebody for a special day to be able to fill in that license.
Thank you. And Councillor Posterero?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, I guess just so this is solely for booking the gazebo structure with the understanding that even if they book it, there's still might be people on floaties out on the beach behind them. And that it's not booking the actual area, it's just booking the structure. Were we considering birthday parties as well to like book, like for example, if they wanted to host a little birthday party with something there? I guess they would have to bring their own tables and stuff, but I don't know.
Thanks, Madam Mayor, to Councillor Posterero. So the parameters with this, just to not confuse, is that it's a maximum of 20 participants. If we'd like to change the language in the bylaw that it is for an event of 20 people or less for $35, we can most certainly do that. The risk is, we know with weddings, they're typically a bit of a more formal setting. What I see happening is people booking the under 20 for $35, and we have no way of controlling it on a weekend. That's the only caution I have for council, but it's your call how you'd like to label this.
Councillor Posterero?
Thank you. And just a quick follow-up, I guess my only concern is that the policing of this, right, where people get in a squabble and they are in the gazebo or something like that, and they're like, I have a permit, right? How is that going to be managed and policed, right, if someone refuses to leave the gazebo area?
Sure. So in this case, we are going to hope that that does not happen. In the event that it does, though, that person would have the contact information of who to reach out to the after hours. So whether it be bylaw, whether it be the person with the phone from Public Works, whether it be someone from the clerk's office, there is a way to work through that. I honestly do believe, though, that that will be a very limited interaction, or that will happen very rarely. I can't see many people bucking back when somebody shows up in a wedding dress at the beach.
Okay, it looks like it's the end of the questions. Oh, sorry, Councillor Wells.
Thank you, Mayor Hagman. My question, I guess, to Ms. Bittner is that this just applies to the gazebo and the gazebo at the marina?
Through you, Madam Mayor, to Councillor Wells. Yes, absolutely. It's for the use of the structure for the event.
And like Councillor Posterero, I was sort of wondering about enforcement of the permit. Mayor Hagman, could I call for a recorded vote on this, please?
You may. Councillor Jim Dunbar, you have a question as well?
Yeah, I mean, more of a statement. I mean, I think the bylaw here is basically, you know, for wedding, venue, photographs, and then looking at a secure way for someone to be able to utilize the area. That does not say that if we run into all kinds of trouble down the road for a $35 fee that's going to cause us a lot more headaches, there's nothing stopping us from rescinding this policy. You know, if that kind of animosity is being created.
Deputy Mayor Summers and then Councillor Betty Ann Dunbar.
I think my question was more, I'm thinking about the marina where somebody might want to use the grassy area instead of the pavilion. Would it matter, Karen, where they would want to be?
Through you, Madam Mayor, to Deputy Mayor Summers, what we can do is bring back to the committee, the Recreation Committee, for other opportunities. These are strictly for the structures, as we had a bylaw that is $200 for both. So this is adding another option for smaller groups.
Okay, thank you.
And Councillor Betty Ann Dunbar.
Thank you, Mayor Hagman. I was just wondering if there was some way we could do advanced posting of these events so that the general public would know that an event is being scheduled there at that time. You may not have quite so much, you know, back and forth. If it's already posted saying this is reserved for whatever time, if that would help, like if we could somehow have some kind of advance policy that, or a policy that would give advancement on it, advance notice of it.
And Ms. Bittner?
Through you, Madam Mayor, to Councillor Dunbar. That's a great idea. And what we can do is actually create a community calendar similarly to the fields. And when we're revamping our website, we could have a pavilion calendar for both the marina and cellars that people could look at, just like the hall. That's an easy thing to add on the website for sure.
That's a great idea. Thank you. Well, I'm not seeing any more hands going up from council, so we are ready for a recorded vote, and I will turn over the vote to Ms. Scott.
Thank you, Mayor Hagman. Deputy Mayor Summers,
I'm in favor.
Councillor Betty Ann Dunbar,
In favor.
Councillor Jim Dunbar,
I'm in favor.
Councillor Stephen Wells,
Opposed.
Councillor Jennifer Pastorero,
In favor.
Mayor Hagman,
In favor.
and that is passed.
Thanks, everyone. And moving on to the correspondence requiring action. We received a notice from ELNOS board representation, and I have a motion on the floor from Councillor Jim Dunbar, seconded by Deputy Mayor Summers. Be it resolved that council nominate a councillor as Blind River representative on the ELNOS board for the 2022-2023 term. Discussion, Deputy Mayor Summers, followed by Councillor Wells.
My question is that because we're having, we won't really know who's going to be on council for that period of time, right? So can we actually nominate someone at this point?
I was thinking the same thing. Councillor Wells, was that your concern?
No, actually, thank you, Mayor Hagman. I was going to suggest a name, but my thought is that the person could serve on the ELNOS board until the election. And if the person should not run for the election, we would simply have to reappoint a new person.
Okay.
And I'm seeing Ms. Scott nodding. Councillor Wells, did you want to say something else before Ms. Scott responds?
Yes, I do. I'd like to suggest that a Councillor B.A. Dunbar has served as well on the ELNOS board, and I would like to put her name forward again for another term.
And again, you're seeing nodding heads, so put this
I would
forward.
second that, Madam Mayor.
Thank you so much, Councillor Jim Dunbar. And Councillor Betty Ann Dunbar, do you accept this nomination?
Yes.
Sounds good. All right. And Ms. Scott, the floor is yours on this.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I was only going to confirm that Councillor Wells is correct, that we would simply, if Councillor Dunbar chooses not to run, we can simply choose another person to appoint to the board.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. And so calling this motion to a vote, all in favor that council nominate Councillor Betty Ann Dunbar as the Blind River representative on the ELNOS board for the 2022-2023 term. All in favor? And that is carried. Thanks, everyone. Always lots of fun when we have one of our own right there. We're just lucky we have great people. All right, under correspondence for information, we have the Board of Health meeting minutes for May 25th, 2022. And this was presented at the June meeting and approved. Are there questions on that meeting? And also from ADSAB, the board meeting minutes of May 12th. And I do apologize, they're always a couple of months behind because we need to have the next month to approve them before I can send them to council. So thank you for that. And there are no notices of motion. We do have an introduction and consideration of one bylaw. This is moved by Councillor Betty Ann Dunbar, seconded by Councillor Jim Dunbar. Be it resolved that council authorize the mayor and CAO to sign bylaw 22-42, being a bylaw to authorize the municipality to enter into an agreement with the Northern Ontario Heritage Fund Corporation to purchase play agreement complete with upgrades and improvements to 6 outdoor recreation parks was passed in open council this 11th day of July, 2022. Any questions or comments on this motion? Seeing none, all in favor? And that is carried. By the way, I never say opposed because we have such an agreeable group, unless there's a recorded vote. We have no council reports or announcements or any addendums. So moving on, we have from a motion from Councillor Posterero, seconded by Councillor Wells. Be it resolved that council go into a closed meeting at 7:50 in accordance to section 239 of the Municipal Act in order to address matters related to personnel and also proposed pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality, as well as litigation. All in favor of this motion? And that is carried. Thanks, everyone. Thanks to the public for listening in. Come back, please, after our closed meeting is over. Take care. And we are back into an open session. Thank you, Council. I have a motion from Councillor Wells, seconded by Councillor Jim Dunbar. Be it resolved that Council resume the open meeting at 8:35 p.m. All in favor with this motion? And that is carried. Thank you. And coming out of council, we did discuss personnel matters, a proposed or pending acquisition or offer to purchase, and litigation related to legal matters of the town. We do have a motion coming out of the close. We have a motion that is moved by Councillor Jim Dunbar, seconded by Councillor Posterero. Be it resolved that council authorize the CAO clerk to advertise for a full-time arena marina laborer in the Parks and Recreation Department. Comments, discussion? All in favor with this motion? And that is carried. Thank you. And I have a motion moved by Deputy Mayor Summers, seconded by Councillor Betty Ann Dunbar. Be it resolved that council authorize the mayor and CAO clerk to sign bylaw 22-43, being a bylaw of the Corporation of the Town of Blind River, to adopt the minutes of the meeting of July 11th, 2022, was passed in open council, and this was passed this 11th day of July 2022. All in favor with this motion? And that is carried. And last but not least, I have a motion from Councillor Jim Dunbar, seconded by Councillor Posterero. Be it resolved that council adjourn at 8:37, sorry. I'm reading ahead of my words. PM, all in favor with this motion? And that is carried. And a reminder, we will see you tomorrow night for our information session at 7 o'clock. Thanks, everyone. Have a great rest of your evening.